I'd like to call to order this regular meeting of the Lincoln-Lancaster County Planning Commission of March 4th, 2026. A printed agenda is available outside the hearing room, and a copy of the full agenda, including staff reports, are available online or at the Planning and Development Services Department, room 203. The Open Meetings Act is posted just inside the doors at the back of the room. In addition, a copy of all staff reports and other relevant documents for the matters to be considered by the Planning Commission are included in a binder that is located on the dais and is available to the public for review. Out of courtesy for those attending this meeting, commissioners and the staff, cell phones may not be used in the chamber during any portion of this meeting. We appreciate your cooperation. Please note the Planning Commission action today is final on the following items. Item 1.3B, Special Permit 26005. Any aggrieved person may appeal final action of the Planning Commission to the City Council or the County Board by filing a notice of appeal with the clerk within 14 days following the action of the Planning Commission. The Planning Commission action on all other items is a recommendation to the City Council or County Board. The first item of business is the approval of the minutes of the regular meeting held February 18th, 2026.
So move, Campbell.
Second, Edens.
Ball,
Yes.
Campbell,
Yes.
Cruz,
Yes.
Ebert,
Yes.
Edens,
Yes.
Fight,
Yes.
Rodenberg,
Yes.
Joy.
Yes.
Minutes approved, 8-0.
The next item of business is the consent agenda. Items on the consent agenda will be called at the same time and will not be scheduled for a separate public hearing unless there is a request from someone wishing to speak or at the request of a commission member. I will now ask Shelley to read all the consent agenda items into the record. Once those items are read, she will ask if there is anyone wishing to speak. If you wish to speak on an item on the consent agenda, we would ask that you stand and state that item. That item will then be removed from the consent agenda and scheduled as a separate public hearing under Section 3 of today's agenda. All items remaining on the consent agenda will be voted upon in total with a motion for approval. Shelley, will you please call the items on the consent agenda?
I will note that item 1.1A, annexation 26002, and associated item 1.1B, change of zone 26002, will be coming off of the consent agenda for a separate public hearing today. First item is 1.2A, annexation 26003, to annex approximately 37.38 acres, more or less, generally located at the southwest corner of South 40th Street and Rokeby Road, associated with item 1.2B, change of zone 26003 from AG Agricultural District to H4 General Commercial PUD Plan Unit Development for the Grandel West PUD with adjustments to the zoning and subdivision ordinance and design standards, and a change of zone from AG to P Public at 3801 Rokeby Road and 10277 South 40th Street, generally located at the southwest corner of South 40th Street and Rokeby Road. Item 1.3A, change of zone 26004 from public to R4 Residential District on property located at 2220 South 10th Street, associated with item 1.3B, special permit 26005, to allow the expansion of a non-standard building and permit a residential healthcare facility for up to 30 residents, also on property located at 22 South 10th Street, and this is final action. Item 1.4, street and alley vacation to vacate a portion, street and alley vacation 26001, to vacate a portion of right-of-way generally located along the east side of North 84th Street between Market Drive and Fremont Street, previously intended to serve the unplatted Express Drive. Are there any ex parte communications to be disclosed on these items?
There are not.
Are there any ex parte communications that took place or additional information you learned while visiting these sites to be disclosed?
There are none.
Is there anyone here wishing to speak on these consent agenda items?
We do not see anyone here that would like to speak on the consent agenda items. We will now entertain a motion on the consent agenda.
I move that we approve the consent agenda. Second, Edens?
Ball,
Yes.
Campbell,
Yes.
Cruz,
Yes.
Ebert,
Yes.
Edens,
Yes.
Fight,
Yes.
Rodenberg,
Yes.
Joy.
Yes.
Consent agenda approved 8-0.
We will now proceed to public hearings. Prior to staff making a brief presentation, each staff person should state their name, agency, and address. The applicant will then be requested to present their testimony, followed by those who wish to testify in support, followed by those who wish to testify in opposition. The staff will then be given an opportunity for rebuttal. If during your testimony you have copies of documents or materials you would like distributed to the Planning Commission members or included as part of the record, please provide them to the clerk. Each person testifying should state their name and address and shall have 5 minutes to speak unless additional time is requested and granted. The clerk will use the light system to help aid your timing for your testimony. The lights will appear on the monitors provided. The clerk will then indicate when you have 1 minute remaining to wrap up your testimony. The red light indicates that your 5 minutes have expired. Once the final minute has lapsed, the clerk will then indicate that your time is up. The Planning Commission will vote immediately at the close of the public hearing unless the commission votes to defer action or continue the public hearing. Shelley, please call the first public hearing item.
Items 1.1A, annexation 26002 to annex approximately 39 acres generally located southeast of the intersection of South 84th Street and South Street, associated with 1.1B, change of zone 26002, Fire Trail Plan Unit Development for a change of zone on approximately 19 acres from AG agricultural to B2 PUD, R4 PUD, and RT PUD on property generally located southeast of South 84th Street and South Street with associated waivers. I will note a staff memo dated March 3rd was sent to Planning Commission members in which the combined staff report for annexation 26002 and change of zone 2602 has been revised to amend the conditions approval for the change of zone. Are there any ex parte communications to be disclosed on these items?
There are none.
Are there any ex parte communications that took place or additional information you learned while visiting these sites to be disclosed?
There are none.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. Jacob Schlengi, Planning and Development Services Department, 555 South 10th Street. As Shelley noted, this is a combined application for annexation and change of zone, which would propose a new PUD, the Fire Trail Planned Unit Development. There are differing application areas, so I want to make sure up front that we're clear on that. The area of annexation is shown here. It's essentially two 19 to 20 acre rectangles here and here. So the applicant initially proposed annexation of the northern half here, which would have effectively left the lot to the south entirely enclosed by the city limits. That lot to the south is owned by Lincoln Public Schools. So they were notified that the city was going to be initiating annexation on that lot. They did not voice any opposition to that annexation. So a few things to note about this property in terms of the annexation. It's shown in the comprehensive plan as Tier 1 Priority B on the growth tier map. This is for areas designated for development in the first half of the planning period that are contiguous to existing development. So as part of the annexation agreement on this property, the developer will agree to improve the intersection here at 84th and South Street. They will be, that will include signalization and construction of turn lanes, both eastbound and westbound left turn lanes and eastbound and westbound right turn lanes, as well as a northbound right turn lane and restriping of the south turn lane. And then the change of zone is, as I noted, a different area of application. So I'll share that here. The proposal is for a new planned unit development, the Fire Trail Planned Unit Development. The existing property is zoned agricultural. It would change to be B2 commercial along 84th Street here, RT, which is residential transition, along the single family lots to the north, and then R4 to allow for a multifamily residential development here, large lot with apartments. So this is in line with the comprehensive plan in terms of the future land use. This lot is shown with a future land use that is a mix of commercial and residential urban density. So this is an appropriate zoning distribution here. I also will note the pipeline planning area along South 84th Street means that commercial is a more appropriate use along 84th Street than the residential use. I noted already residential transition along the north. That is in part to provide a buffer to the residential lots to the north. There are 4 single-family homes, one of which is currently being used as a residential healthcare facility. But the residential transition zoning has a lower height limit for buildings in the area, and the developer is showing medical offices at that location, which will be a less intensive use than some of the other uses that are shown in this commercial portion of the development to the south, which includes, I believe, a fast food restaurant, a car wash, some other more intensive uses. I also will note in terms of impact on surrounding neighbors, the multifamily, and actually I'll show you this. This is maybe a little. So the multifamily is shown on this large lot here. And in terms of impact on the neighbors to the east, there is a 30-foot setback that will be required along the east side of the development. And then there's actually an outlot that is full of an existing tree mass between the single-family houses to the east, and that outlot is between 60 and 90 feet wide as it goes along the north-south axis there. So that is it in terms of the overall impact on the surrounding area. One other thing I want to note is you'll see on this plan the existing South Street right-of-way that is to be vacated. The developer will be vacating that existing right-of-way and will be dedicating new right-of-way to realign South Street. And I know there were some questions that were submitted as comments to the Planning Commission, so I wanted to spend just a little bit of time providing some context on South Street. For much of its length across the city running east-west, South Street runs along the center point of a section. So it divides the north and south portions of the section. That ceases to be the case as South Street hits 70th Street, and it kind of arches to the south and then comes back north as it approaches 84th Street. So it makes kind of a dip as you look at the map. Those neighborhoods that South Street runs through were platted in the 1970s, so that has been the case with South Street for over 50 years now. I believe that neighborhood was initially preliminary platted in 1971. So the existing South Street right-of-way begins south of the center point of the section. The center point of the section would be right there along the north boundary of this area of annexation. So the existing South Street right-of-way looks as though it was intended to sort of curve back up and meet the center point of the section. Obviously, it doesn't go all the way to that point. It ceases there. The reason for the South Street alignment that's proposed here with the PUD is because in 2018, the Wandering Creek PUD was approved, which had a different layout for South Street. So I did provide here a screenshot so that you can see that a little bit better. So here is South Street immediately to the east of this property that we're talking about today. And you can see it kind of curves this way, and that curve provides a little bit of traffic calming along a site that's intended for future Lincoln Public Schools elementary school. And I'll also note there are 2 roundabouts that are approved in the Wandering Creek development. So the South Street alignment that's shown by the applicant for this application is meant to curve up so that it can meet the roundabout that's shown here today. And that was approved in the Wandering Creek PUD back in 2018. So I know that there was some question about the location of it relative to, relative to the location of the Messiah Lutheran property here. In the future, if that property develops, South Street would be built with some land being dedicated from that property to complete South Street. That would be the case whether it was aligned on the center point of the section or whether it was this approved plan for South Street. And in doing the rough math, it looks to be that about a half acre would be dedicated, whether it was along this rectangle here to show, show a different map. So this area comes out to about a half acre with the proposed dedication that would happen in the future. And if it were aligned along the center point, it would also be about a half acre, but it would run across the length of the entire southern portion of the property. So that was just some napkin math that's not precise, but wanted to note that, and also note that there is not a requirement that Messiah Lutheran develop this property at this time. South Street will end at a dead end at the end of the property. If at any point they do want to develop that property, then the completion of South Street would be a requirement as part of a final plat. But there's not a requirement to do anything with that property right now. So with that, we'll stop and take any questions that you have.
Anyone have questions for staff? Go for it, Commissioner.
So currently, what we see right now on the screen, that's pretty final for how that South Street Road will be developed.
Yeah.
On this piece of property.
This piece of property,
Okay,
correct.
thank you.
Yeah. It does ultimately have to come in to meet Wandering Creek to the east with what's been already approved.
Awesome, thanks.
Okay. Anyone else have questions? Okay, thank you. Now we will have testimony from the applicant.
Good afternoon, Greg Frazier, attorney for the applicant. I'm happy to take any questions.
Address, please.
8850 Ranch Gate Road.
you.
Thank you. Happy to take any questions from the commission, but I think it may be more instructive for me to reserve time for rebuttal to see what questions or issues may be raised by anyone that wants to speak in opposition.
Okay. Would we start with any questions here? We'll go ahead and reserve your time then.
Thank you.
Thank you. Testimony in support. Testimony in a neutral position. Testimony in opposition.
Good afternoon. My name is John Kunze. I am a senior pastor for Messiah Lutheran Church and School that has been referenced already. I'm at 9237 Dargent Court here in Lincoln. So thank you for the opportunity to come here today. And I want to start by saying that at Messiah we are very, very interested in being good neighbors, and we are very supportive of the project that's being proposed to our south, and we see that being a blessing to our community and the surrounding. So I'm not in opposition to that or even to the zoning that I know is part of this. As has been brought up, our concern is with the layout of South Street as it's been proposed. I just learned listening that in 2018 it was approved. I didn't know that, and I think that's kind of indicative of how our approach is today. Is we haven't been a part of a conversation that we would love to have. We would love to sit down and talk about how we can work on this together to best suit not just their development, but what's going out to the east. Lincoln's growing, and that's a great thing. So I just feel like we haven't had an opportunity to be a part of the conversation, and our concern is that, and I think it was stated here, that the way that South Street is plotted right now, there's not an indication that we have to do something immediately, but we have no near-term plans to develop that piece of property. But if we do in the future, then we just don't have the resources to be able to put in a road. It puts us, I feel like, in a position that we would be required to do something at a later date. and it would hold up what would happen in East Lincoln if there's just one piece of road that happens to be missing and it's on Messiah's property. So we're concerned about just what that the position it might put us in for future growth and for future development should we decide to do something with that piece of property. But again, we would love to have a conversation. I was able to, and he said I could use his name. I talked with Mr. Chris Kidwell also, whose property would be impacted by this a little bit in that corner. And he too just indicated would love to come to the table and have a conversation on how this could be beneficial for everybody. So we had proposed, and I think you have been given our comments, so if there's questions on those specific comments, but we also submitted a proposal of putting South Street again back in its original right-of-way that was following the lot line and then impacting only half of the property on either side. So that was our request, or at least to be considered. So again, we're very supportive of what's happening and not in opposition to that, but we're just concerned about the position it would put us as a congregation, as a church and school ministry. We just finished a multi-million-dollar build out to serve more families of our school and our early childhood, and we're going to be working on that depth for the foreseeable future. So it doesn't put us in a position to be able to extend that in the near future. So I guess that would be, if there's any questions.
Commissioner Campbell.
In looking at this, the overhead electrical lines go through the same corner,
Yes, sir.
which would prohibit any building in that area. So your main objection is the fact that you would end up paying for the whole street in your section versus half of it if it went along the lot line.
I think that certainly is, a majority of it. I believe as we looked at that, putting the whole road onto Messiah's property, it certainly allows the developer to maximize their building space on theirs, but kind of at the expense of Messiah then having to take on the road on ours. And so there's a financial side of it, certainly, and I think that also just brings up the idea that it also is then kind of sacrificing whether it's half acre, 3/4 acre, whatever that turns out to be. And again, so just wanting to make that something that would be, I guess, a little more fair in that way, if that's the right way to say it.
Okay. Any other questions at this time? Okay, thank you for your testimony.
Thank you for allowing me to.
Staff questions, please. Oh, 2 seconds, we may have. Oh, you're good. Okay, perfect.
Moving closer.
Just moving closer. Good. I'm like, that's odd that you guys are going to oppose. Jacob,
Any
let's have
questions?
some questions here. Commissioner Campbell.
Jacob, what was the reason for the curvature in South Street that goes totally on the Messiah property?
Yeah, so my understanding in the curvature of the street to the east that was approved with Wandering Creek was that it was in part to serve as a traffic calming for the future Lincoln Public Schools site. There's an elementary school that will be there to the northeast. And this curve allows for South Street to come up and intersect with the roundabout. So that's my understanding from the sort of, I'm not a traffic engineer, but from the traffic side of things.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Commissioner?
In your staff report, I noticed a condition you recommend denial. Can you explain that a little? I
Yes,
didn't know what that meant. The K factor something.
So again, I'm not a traffic engineer. My understanding is that it has to do with visibility and sight lines. And during one of the meetings that took place with LTU and the applicant, I believe that there was agreement that LTU was not going to support that and the applicant was going to identify ways to work around that. So the reason for the recommending denial was based on conversations with LTU traffic.
Okay. Any other questions? Okay, thank you. Applicant rebuttal.
Good afternoon again. I'm joined by Tim Gergen, who I'm sure you're familiar with, but is helping us with civil engineering on this property. Let me start before Tim talks a little bit about sort of the specifics of the road and how we're constructing it. I appreciate Messiah Lutheran's concern about where the road goes and how it interacts with their property. In terms of fairness, I think there's a misconception about the entirety of a portion of the road going onto the Messiah property. If we were to extend that road across the entirety of the property line, I think both the amount of property taken and the cost of road constructed would be essentially the same. And so we're not trying to push cost or dedication of right-of-way onto an adjacent property, but extend just confining it to a portion of the property, which, as Commissioner Campbell pointed out, is actually not developable otherwise because of the power lines that run through that section, and wouldn't be a cost that would need to be incurred by the Messiah property unless and until, obviously, that property was chosen by them to be developed.
And Tim, could you state your address for the record for us?
1010 Lincoln Mall.
Thank you so much.
So that triangle that Mr. Campbell is speaking of is that right there, and this is where that road is coming through. Efficiency-wise, that is a good location for a roadway to be placed because it's in an unbuildable area where it's not very conducive for a large building in that triangle. I'll go back to the comment about the denial. It was a vertical curve length is what was denial. It's a vertical curve request we were asking for that is approved by the federal standards. Local standards are a little bit tighter. And so we were okay with going back to the local standards. The location of South Street was dictated many years ago before this project came forward and like Jacob had stated earlier, the Wandering Creek PUD is really what dictated that location. As part of a PUD application, they have to state the roadways as they continue pasture extends to within 300 feet. That 300 feet was about right here. And so what we did is we tried to get it off of the church property as quickly as possible within current roadway design standards. We actually did correspond with the church, and I will forward, Jacob, those emails to you so they become public record. There were church members that reached out to me on behalf of the church, and we sent them our current plans and kind of told them our intention, and this is what the plan was. So we were in complete correspondence with this project with the church.
So I have a question.
Let's go ahead, Commissioner.
So I hate talking in hypotheticals, but I'm gonna do it. So that portion of the property cannot be developed, just given overhead lines, et cetera.
Complicated.
Okay, very complicated. But Jacob mentioned it would be a requirement if development does happen, they would have to do something, all right? And so what are those conditions that will require them to build that road if they wanted to do some development there?
Yes, well, it'd be, and Jacob could talk more clearly on that, but subdivision regulations that create any roadway, you'd have to require to build a road that abuts your property that you're developing. So the church would be responsible. So Wandering Creek is responsible, and Mr. Kidwell is responsible for property, that road to here. We are responsible to here, and then the church would be responsible for that road in that location.
Good, thank you.
Other questions? I do have a question. When you just spoke about the vertical curve link, so the design does show the City of Lincoln standard now.
Yes, so this is a horizontal design, so the vertical design is all in the grading, and it would not affect the layout.
Perfect. So just making sure that what was requested for a denial is not part of the plan now.
Right.
Okay, just confirming that. Okay. Any other questions? Okay, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Motion to close the public hearing, please.
I would move to close the public hearing.
Second, Edens.
Ball,
Yes.
Campbell,
Yes.
Cruz,
Yes.
Ebert,
Yes.
Edens,
Yes.
Fight,
Yes.
Rodenberg,
Yes.
Joy.
Yes,
Public hearing closed.
And I would move to approve, I can get back to it.
26002.
Thank you, 26002.
Second, Edens.
and on that motion, we're doing the first item, correct?
Yes.
Commissioner? Thank
That's
you.
the annexation.
Okay, discussion.
It's, I can understand from the church's perspective, the cost that it adds to anything they may want to do, but it appears to be the logical way for South Street to be developed east of 84th. And thus I'll be supporting the annexation and the change of zone.
Commissioner?
I agree similarly. I think something was missed in 2018, and I hope as a board and as the people listening that we continue to rectify that we reach out to our neighbors if it's going to affect them in the future, whether it be 4 years or 40 years, that we're reaching out to those people so they know, A, this is coming. Because where that road has to hook up into, I don't see another option at this point. So that's why I will be supporting both of these as well.
Okay. Commissioner?
I guess I'll support it. My biggest concern is that portion will be not developed for who knows how long, and so there will be no way to go east on South Street because there will be a dead end there. And so I just think, yeah, just that long-term thoughtful planning maybe could have been better. There's always a struggle with a straightaway too. You don't want people racing down South Street, kind of like they do on 84th Street or 98th Street now. So, there's a give and take there, but who knows? Messiah kind of has the controls on how soon South Street goes east and whether people can go all the way from 84th to 98th or not. And I guess that's okay, but it's kind of weird to have just that little section not developed.
Thank you. Any other comments, commissioners? Yes, thank you for everyone's testimony and work on this project. It, again, gives us opportunity to reflect on process and gives us opportunity to improve as we move forward. And again, looking at possible other solutions in the future as we work on South Street. Shelley?
Ball,
Yes.
Campbell,
Yes.
Cruz,
Yes.
Ebert,
Yes.
Edens,
Yes.
Fight,
Yes.
Rodenberg,
Yes.
Joy.
Yes.
Approved 8-0.
And I would move that we approve change of zone 26002.
Second, Edens.
Shelley?
Ball,
Yes.
Campbell,
Yes.
Cruz,
Yes.
Ebert,
Yes.
Edens,
Yes.
Fight,
Yes.
Rodenberg,
Yes.
Joy.
Yes.
Approved 8-0.
Go ahead and move into the text amendment.
Next item is item 4.1, text amendment 26002, to revise the conditions for accessory dwelling units in the R1 through R4 zoning districts and related revisions to the Lincoln Municipal Code, including amendments to the following chapters: 27.02 definitions, 27.06 use groups, 27.60 plan unit development districts, 27.62 conditional uses, 27.64 use permits, 27.65 community unit plan, and 27.72 height and lot regulations. Are there any ex parte communications to be disclosed on this item?
Yes, there are.
Yes, this was presented at the Mayor's Roundtable. We had a great conversation, many of us in the room disagreed with one another, but it was a good conversation. We also talked about it at the Clinton Neighborhood Organization. Clinton Neighborhood Organization did not take a formal one side or another, and I don't see anybody in the room from that organization. But again, a good conversation on what this entails and what it looks like in our neighborhood.
Great.
Hello again, Jacob Schlange, Planning and Development Services Department, 555 South 10th Street. I apologize, my computer decided in the last 5 minutes to do an update on the Microsoft suite. So here we are though, it's ready to go. So I'll be talking to you today about our proposed text amendment for accessory dwelling units. I don't want to
No worries. We're good.
Okay.
Okay, perfect.
I don't want to assume too much foreknowledge about accessory dwelling units, so I'm going to really start at the very basic level and walk through both what an accessory dwelling unit is, what our current conditions are in Lincoln, and what's proposed with this proposed text amendment. So for starters, what is an accessory dwelling unit? And I'm going to refer to it probably interchangeably as accessory dwelling unit and as ADU. We use that shorthand a lot, but essentially this is a self-contained dwelling unit that is subordinate to a primary building on a lot. And so it is a smaller dwelling than the primary dwelling on a lot. It's going to typically share utilities with the main dwelling. In the city of Lincoln, that's a requirement that it share utilities with the main building. And an accessory dwelling unit, while it is a smaller dwelling, it still is going to have a sleeping area, a food preparation area or kitchen area, and a bathroom. And it is self-contained, so it is separate from the rest of a dwelling. I think a lot of times when people think about an accessory dwelling unit, they just think about one thing, which is a small house in a backyard. And there are a lot of different forms that an accessory dwelling unit can take. So an ADU can be a detached, smaller home on the lot, but it can also be attached to the main dwelling. So you could think about an addition to the back of a house that is a separate entrance and a separate self-contained dwelling. Or it could be built above an existing garage, or it could be a conversion of a garage or an attic or a basement into a separate dwelling unit. So there's lots of forms that it can take. It's not just one thing. The way that our code is written does allow an accessory dwelling unit to be either attached or detached. So any of these things that are shown on the screen here could be what an ADU looks like. There are a lot of advantages for communities in building accessory dwelling units and in enabling them to be built. One of the great things is that it allows communities to take better advantage of existing housing stock, especially in established neighborhoods that are a little bit older. It creates a greater variety of types of housing. Not everyone needs a single family detached home. Some people have desires for other types of housing and maybe need a smaller space. And ADUs allow the community to provide more options and a greater variety. Many times because they are smaller, they can be more affordable. And so it can be a way to provide more affordable housing in a community as well. And one way that it also supports housing affordability is that a homeowner that has an ADU on their property could use the rental income generated from renting out that ADU to support themselves. So it can make home ownership more affordable for a homeowner who has an ADU on their property. And in general, it allows for this increase in housing stock with a lesser impact on existing neighborhoods than you might otherwise have with larger structures being built. And I like this image because it displays the way in which multiple different kinds of ADUs could be added to a neighborhood without having an overall impact on the urban form when you're walking down a street, because you're not building a bunch of new houses that are going to be necessarily widely visible from the street. Now, there are also some advantages to individual homeowners from having an ADU, and there's lots of different reasons why someone might want to build an ADU. One great thing is that it provides an independent living space that could be used for relatives, whether that is an older relative that needs some additional support, or maybe it's a younger relative who's moving back home with mom and dad but wants a separate living space. So there's lots of different forms that could take. And one really great advantage, and I know that at a national level, one of the reasons that the AARP advocates for ADUs is because it enables aging in place. Someone who really loves their existing neighborhood could stay there as they age and downsize potentially into an accessory dwelling unit that is going to be a smaller home for them while still staying in that same neighborhood and on the same lot, actually. And in general, it serves a variety of different caretaking needs. So whether that's someone who might have a disability or an illness and needs some additional caretaking but wants to live independently, this can provide for a caretaker to live on the same premises but in a separate dwelling. I mentioned the additional rental stream that it can provide, but there's also other uses that it could be put to. So an accessory dwelling unit could be used for a short-term rental, but it could also be a guest house or a pool house. There's different forms that could take. So when we look at Lincoln's current ADU policy, we do allow ADUs as a conditionally permitted use right now in the R1 through R4 residential districts. You can see on the map all of the R1 through R4 districts, so you can tell that most of Lincoln is one of those residential districts. So ADUs are conditionally permitted. They have to meet 8 conditions that are outlined in the zoning code in order to be built. Our comprehensive plan has supported the construction of ADUs and the use of ADUs for a long time for all the reasons that I mentioned before. The comprehensive plan also recommends that we evaluate ways that we could allow for more ADUs to be effectively integrated into the neighborhood. So that's what we're doing here today. And I also wanted to know, in terms of existing conditions in Lincoln, that there are some newer developments, some planned unit developments that actually allow ADUs in modified circumstances from what our zoning code allows. So a couple of examples of that: the Village Gardens neighborhood at 56th and Pine Lake, and the Fallbrook neighborhood in Northwest Lincoln, both have provisions to allow for ADUs, and in both cases they actually allow larger ADUs than what our code allows or would allow as proposed to be amended. So it is a conditionally permitted use already, as I said. You must meet 8 conditions in order to be approved to build an ADU. And currently, when we start to look at the list of conditions, most lots get held up by condition number 1 and don't make it any further than that. Right now, based on our analysis of all of the parcels in R1 through R4 districts, only about 24% of parcels in those districts could meet the existing lot area requirement that the city of Lincoln has for ADUs. So most lots are eliminated from the opportunity to build an ADU at that first step. They don't even make it down to the rest of the conditions. So knowing that, and knowing that that is a barrier, but that there are also some other barriers to constructing ADUs, it makes sense why we haven't seen a widespread proliferation of accessory dwelling units being built in Lincoln since these conditions were approved back in 2018. And so because of that, we started to look at what could we do to start to address that issue that is identified in the comprehensive plan of making accessory dwelling units more easily integrated into our neighborhoods. So we started by looking at what are other cities doing, doing an analysis of some of our peer cities. And I just want to highlight one key finding from that, which was across all of the cities that we looked at, Lincoln has the most restrictive lot area requirement of any city when it comes to conditions for ADUs. And I'll explain more about what our current condition is with lot area requirements in just a moment. So looking at the potential barriers to constructing ADUs and what we thought made sense as a possible amendment, we started to draft a proposal for the amendments that could be made to reduce some of these barriers. We started to have conversations with some neighborhood stakeholders, with realtor groups, with the with the Mayor's Neighborhood Roundtable, with home builders groups, with NeighborWorks, talking about some of the stakeholders who might have a vested interest in seeing ADUs in the community, but also getting the feedback of neighborhood groups like the Mayor's Neighborhood Roundtable, on the impact that they could have in an existing neighborhood. And overall, the goal was really to strike a balance so that we're minimizing the overall impact on neighborhoods while also allowing for an increase in the number of ADUs that can be built. So the first part of the text amendment that I want to focus on is the lot area requirement, because as I noted, that is a disqualifier for most of the residential lots right now in the R1 through R4 district. So you can see the numbers here. Currently, to build an ADU on your lot, you must meet the lot area that requirement for a two-family home. So it's not enough to be on a single-family lot that meets the single-family lot requirement. You currently must have enough lot area to have two dwellings on your lot. Again, as I said, that's the most restrictive of any of the cities that we looked at. So our proposal is that we would modify to say you must meet the lot area requirement of a single family home. And if you met that lot area requirement, which is listed here for those square footages, then you would be able to construct an ADU as long as you met the rest of the conditions, of course. That takes the number of lots that would meet this requirement from 24%, as I said, up to about 80% of lots that could meet that first condition. Now, that remaining 20% is largely going to be lots that are, in most cases, were platted prior to the adoption of our current zoning code and do not meet the lot area requirement because they're smaller than what would be permitted today as a lot area requirement. They're, of course, allowed to continue existing as a non-standard lot, but this would not help those lots, essentially. So there are still some lots in the R1 through R4 district that this text amendment would not allow to build ADUs based on the lot area. The next thing that I want to focus on is the setback requirements. Our current condition says that an ADU must meet the setback requirements of the main building. So what that means is whether the ADU is attached to the main house or not, it has to be treated as though it is part of the main house for setback purposes, which means that as an example of just a random single family home, I've shown you on the picture here the rear yard setback, which in this case is 20 feet. So no ADU could be built anywhere within that 20-foot setback. What we're proposing is that, of course, an attached ADU would still be required to meet the setbacks of the main building, but that a detached ADU could be built within the setbacks in the same way that any other accessory building could be built in the setbacks. So currently, a garage or a shed is an accessory building that could be built within your rear yard setback or your side yard setback. And so we are proposing to treat an ADU similarly for the purposes of setbacks. It would still be required to be 60 feet from the front lot line, which means that you wouldn't be building in your front yard setback, of course, but it would allow for construction of an ADU within the rear yard setback or the side yard setback. There's a few other things that I want to kind of quickly highlight that are proposed to be changed. One is the way that we handle total accessory floor area. So as the code is written right now, an ADU counts towards the maximum amount of floor area for accessory floor area that you can have on your lot. Now, a garage, whether it's attached or detached, also counts towards that accessory floor area. So if you had a 3-car garage that is nearly 1,000 square feet, and you're on a lot that has 1,000 square foot maximum floor area for your accessory space, your accessory floor area, you would not be able to build an ADU because you don't have the square footage available. So we're essentially, with this proposal, saying that we wouldn't count the ADU area towards your floor area of your accessory space on your lot. We are also looking at adjusting the height requirements. The current requirement is that an ADU can't be taller than the primary house. In looking at the height requirement, there's not a really good reason for saying it can't be taller than the primary house, and that also precludes some things like building an ADU over a garage or something like that. And so by saying we're going to require that the ADU meet the requirements of the zoning district. The exception to that would be if you are going to build in the setbacks closer to your lot line, you would need to follow the height requirements of an accessory building. And so in these zoning districts, that would be 15 feet. We also wanted to clarify short-term rental conditions The code does already allow for an accessory dwelling unit to be used as a short-term rental, but we wanted to make clear that if you're going to use your accessory dwelling unit as your short-term rental, that is the only space on your lot that would be a short-term rental. You wouldn't also be able to rent out a part of the primary house as your short-term rental. So you need to pick one, essentially. And then we also looked at the density calculation in some of our zoning overlay districts, our planned unit developments, our community unit plans, and our use permits, to say that an ADU constructed on a lot would not count towards the total number of dwellings that are permitted within that zoning overlay district. So if a CUP was approved for 500 units and then later residents wanted to build ADUs on their lot, they wouldn't be limited by the maximum residential density from doing that. Now, there's some things that we're not proposing to change, and I wanted to quickly highlight those so that you're clear on what we would not be changing. One of those is the maximum size allowed for the ADU. We have a maximum size currently of 800 square feet or 40% of the primary house, whichever is smaller. We're not proposing to change that, nor are we looking to modify the current requirement that an ADU only have one bedroom. Another requirement that is staying largely the same, although the language is being tweaked a little bit, as I'm sure you saw in the staff report, is that the lot owner must live on the property. They can either live in the accessory dwelling unit or in the primary residence, but they must live on the premises. And the intent behind that is really to make sure that we're not allowing neighborhoods to have ADUs installed and completely overturning homeowners in the neighborhood with pure rental properties. There's a value that we see in having homeowners living in the neighborhood and on the premises. So that is not proposed to change right now. An ADU would still be required to share utility connections with the main house. And we're not proposing to change the parking requirement at this time either. And I'll go into more depth in just a moment on what that means. But the last thing is a property with an ADU must have a deed restriction saying you're never going to sell the ADU separately from the house, and that's not proposed to change. So a couple of these items, I'm almost done, but I'm going to delve slightly more deeply into a couple of these. I mentioned that we're not proposing to change the maximum size at this time. So again, the requirement is that an ADU could have the lesser of 800 square feet or 40% of the primary dwelling, and it's limited to one bedroom. The goal behind this is really that an ADU should be subordinate to the main house. It is not meant to be the primary use on the property. It is an accessory dwelling, so it is an accessory to the primary house. And so the idea is that by limiting the size, we're limiting the impact on neighbors in terms of the size of buildings that would be built. And by limiting to one bedroom, we're also limiting the number of residents who would be living there, which would have then follow-on effects for the impact on the neighborhood. We're not going to increase the number of drivers who need to have a car on the lot by having a bunch of people living in this accessory dwelling unit, for example. And I provided some site plans or some floor plans that I pulled from the internet just to show you what that could look like. So for 330 feet on the left, as a small option, you can see that you still have a bedroom, a bathroom, a kitchen, and a small living space. And our code allows up to 800 depending on the size of the main house. So there's definitely some room to work with within those size limitations. And then the parking requirement is the other one that I wanted to delve more deeply into because in talking to the neighborhood groups, this was one of the areas where we heard the most vocal opposition to making any changes to the ADU requirements here. So the current requirement is that an ADU requires one stall for parking in addition to the already required stalls for the primary use as a single-family home. In the R1 through R4 district, single-family homes require 2 parking stalls. So to have an ADU on your lot, you would need to be able to provide 3 parking stalls. In these zoning districts, it is allowed to stack a vehicle one behind another. And so what that means is that if you had a 2-car garage, as shown in the picture here, with a driveway in front of it, that is 4 parking stalls. So you meet the ADU requirement of providing 3 stalls. So you don't need to provide an additional stall, you just need to be able to show that you have 3 stalls on your lot. Now that does mean that if you have a 1-car garage with 1 stall on the driveway in front, that's not going to meet the parking requirement, and so that situation would not allow an ADU. So I'm just going to briefly summarize because I know I've talked at you for a long time, but as I mentioned up front, ADUs allow us to meet a number of community goals that have been outlined in the comprehensive plan. The comprehensive plan has supported more widespread proliferation of ADUs for years and has already encouraged us to be reevaluating how we can better integrate these into our neighborhoods. Because they're already a conditional use in the R1 through R4 district, what we are looking to do is just modify some of those conditions to reduce some of the barriers, because currently fewer than 1/4 of all lots could possibly qualify for an ADU. So the goal behind this amendment is really to strike a balance between reducing some barriers, allowing for an increased number of ADUs to be built, and increase the variety of housing stock in our community, while also recognizing that we're trying to limit the impact that this would have on the surrounding neighborhoods. So with that, I will take any questions that you have.
Commissioner Campbell? And then we'll work.
Jacob, the one concern that I don't see addressed is for the architecture of an ADU to be similar to the existing home.
Yes, thank you for that question. So we are not proposing to change the design standards for accessory dwelling units. The City of Lincoln already does have design standards in place for accessory dwelling units, and one element of that is compatibility with the existing home.
Okay.
Now, there's a variety of factors that play into that, things like materials, roof type, but the design standards do call for compatibility with the main home.
Thank you.
Commissioner Ball?
That was a good one, thank you. I was gonna ask that one as well. Mine, I appreciate the education in front around what an ADU would be. I did not know attached was one of them. So I know people will build in-law suites or mother-in-law suites as additions. Didn't necessarily consider that as an ADU. And so it's somewhat blurry for me in regards to when do you determine it's an addition to the home if it does have similar requirements versus classified as an ADU?
Yeah, so I think some of this comes down to nomenclature, because people will often refer to an ADU as a mother-in-law suite or a casita in some parts of the country. But if it is a separate self-contained dwelling and it has these components of a kitchen space and a living space, sleeping space, and a bathroom, then we would classify that as an ADU in our zoning ordinance.
So for permitting, then, if anyone is looking to build an addition and it has those 10 requirements, private entrance, is like metering as part of it? I know it's shared utility, but a separate meter and...
So it's shared utility, so it would all be on 1 meter.
So hit those requirements, then they would have to make sure it's, well, it will be an ADU and they have to make sure that it fits the requirements from the zoning perspective.
Correct.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay, and then I don't know if I saw in the report, I saw those 8 requirements, but not necessarily for, I don't think it was specific to ADU, if I recall. That was on 5, it's the minimum lot area, caps square footage, requirement of the owner residing on the lot, height restrictions, et cetera.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't think that necessarily called out the features of the ADU, if that makes sense.
Yeah, you're right. So those are not conditions that would be listed in, so these are conditions for approval of the construction of an ADU, but those are not things that we would look at as a condition for approving an ADU. So the definition of an ADU, I believe I've got it here. So yeah, it doesn't call out specifically a kitchen space, a sleeping space, but those are things that would be a signal to a plan reviewer. This might be an ADU that we're looking at.
Okay. Yeah, I think it may be helpful just to have that show up somewhere if possible, just so that as you build, design, develop, there's awareness of what's expected and the requirements around it.
Thank you, Commissioner. Any, Commissioner Rodenberg?
Just a logistical question. The county assessor lists square footage as finished above grade, where in the multiple listing service, we are now listing finished basement also as square footage. So when you're looking at the maximum size for an ADU, which do you look at?
So we would be looking at the total square footage of the primary house. Now, that does not include accessory area like a garage or maintenance area in terms of mechanical areas like a mechanical room with your furnace. But the rest of the house, the total square footage.
Including the finished basement, below grade, okay.
Commissioner Fay?
I have 3. Okay. You mentioned you compared our Lincoln requirements to other cities. I'm just curious what some of those cities were.
Yeah, I anticipated that someone might ask that. So the cities that I looked at, we did look at Omaha as well, being the other Nebraska city that has looked at these requirements substantially. I've got Boise, Des Moines, Kansas City, Missouri, Minneapolis, Sioux Falls, and Wichita.
Okay, cool. My curiosity is, you mentioned like Fallbrook, they have already a set PUD, so their rules and regulations or things under their PUD supersede these requirements? Is that how that works?
Yeah, so the PUD, planned unit development, is a zoning overlay that allows modifications to the zoning requirements.
Okay.
And so a PUD could adopt as part of its modifications to the zoning requirements that it would be allowed to have accessory dwelling units on all lots in the PUD. So if you think back to a couple weeks ago, we had a PUD
Right.
application for Red Tail Heights.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the notes in the Red Tail Heights PUD is that ADUs are allowed on all lots. And they placed a maximum square footage of 60% of the primary dwelling. So they're not subject to the conditions that are outlined in the zoning code because they've already said it's allowed on all lots. It doesn't matter how big the lot is. It doesn't matter, all those other conditions. But they've placed a cap of 60% of the primary dwelling, which is different than the cap that would be in these conditions. And I'm forgetting which is which, but both Fallbrook and Village Gardens allow ADUs with some different requirements. One allows ADUs up to 1,000 square feet, and the other allows a maximum of 2 bedrooms as opposed to 1 bedroom.
So usually it's if their requirements are less stringent, that it's more okay. So I'm thinking of like HOAs. They can't do that though, because it's not a PUD. A PUD is
So
only one. Go ahead.
An HOA can still restrict the presence of ADUs. They can basically say only 1 dwelling unit would be permitted on a lot. That's a private agreement.
Oh, okay.
It
I was curious about that.
Yeah, so it's a private agreement, so it wouldn't, our city law wouldn't supersede that restriction.
Okay.
That an HOA might place on a neighborhood.
I'm glad I asked that. Okay. So you briefly mentioned the situation with a homeowner with a 1-car garage and a driveway, and they only have 2. And so they need a 3rd parking stall if they want an ADU.
Correct.
How can they go about doing that? I mean, widening the driveway would be okay. Creating a brand new driveway for the, what's allowed in that situation for that owner?
Yeah, it's a good question, and it really would depend on the specific circumstances of the lot. But one option could be to widen the driveway. If it happens to be an alley access lot, there could be a parking spot provided with access off the alley.
Okay.
Which would mostly be the case in older neighborhoods, though not exclusively. But there would have to be an additional parking stall provided in order to meet the condition.
Okay, thank you.
Perfect. Other questions? Okay, thank you. Now, I assume you're the applicant, right?
The planning
Okay,
department is the
perfect. Testimony and support. Okay, perfect.
Got some booklets for the commissioners.
Pictures.
Yeah.
You don't have enough paperwork, right? My name's Kevin Johnson. I live at 3045 Laredo Drive here in Lincoln. I'm here both as a member of the community and as an AARP Nebraska volunteer. We stand in strong support of this proposed amendment that will make building accessory dwelling units, or ADUs, which I will use the rest of this presentation, more feasible for homeowners in our community. Our mission at AARP is to empower people to choose how they live as they age. According to our 2025 Vital Voices survey, 92% of Nebraskans age 45 and older rank being able to live independently in their own home as they age extremely or very important. Aging in place isn't a luxury or a trend. It's a deeply held value shared by older adults across our state. But for aging in place to be realistic, people need housing options that support changing needs. And right now, too many neighborhoods simply don't offer them. That's where ADUs come in. ADUs are one of the most practical, flexible, family-friendly tools we have to help older adults remain in the homes and communities they love. They allow families to support one another. Whether an older adult adds an ADU for a caregiver or family member, or a family builds one to care for a parent, grandparent, or other elderly relative. They help people stay connected, reduce social isolation, and delay or avoid the need for more expensive, higher levels of care. The zoning amendments before you today don't overhaul the character of our neighborhoods. They simply remove barriers that prevent homeowners from creating these much-needed housing options. They allow ADUs on single-family lots. They enable the conversion of existing garages or accessory structures. They fix height and floor limitations, and they clarify how short-term rentals apply. These changes make the code more practical and workable. Just as important, these updates give older adults and their families real choices. They make it possible to downsize without leaving a beloved neighborhood, bring family closer for support, or create a private space for caregiving that preserves independence and dignity on both sides. They also provide opportunities for modest rental income, helping older adults manage rising costs while staying in their homes longer. As has been said, other communities throughout the country have already modernized their zoning to allow ADUs because they recognize that our population is aging and our housing needs are evolving. This amendment allows our city to do the same, to respond proactively, compassionately, and responsibly to the needs of our residents. AARP's vision is a society in which all people live with dignity and purpose and fulfill their goals and dreams. Supporting these zoning changes allow longtime residents to stay rooted in the neighborhoods where they've raised families, built relationships, and contributed to the community. It means supporting families, providing stability, and is another tool towards healthy aging. On behalf of AARP Nebraska, I urge you to recommend approval of this amendment and take an important step toward making our great community even more age-friendly, more inclusive, and more responsive to the real-world needs of the people that live here. Thank you, and I'll take any questions, but I'm a volunteer.
Any questions today? Thank you so much for your time.
You bet.
Hello, my name is Nash Leaf. I'm at 2445 B Street. I've lived in Lincoln for the past decade and have been a homeowner in the Near South for the last 5 years. My wife and I serve as board members of the Near South Neighborhood Association, and we are raising our growing family in this community. I am here today, however, to speak in a personal capacity in support of the proposed expanded ADU regulations. I believe accessory dwelling units offer a path towards gentle density in some of Lincoln's most in-demand neighborhoods. They increase housing options by utilizing existing infrastructure, provide opportunities for multi-generational families to support loved ones while allowing them to live independently. My wife and I are currently under contract to purchase a property in the near South's Mount Emerald Historic District with the intention of developing one of the first ADUs permitted under the proposed regulations. As stewards of a century-old home, we believe that expanding access to ADU permits allows homeowners to thoughtfully reinvest in existing properties, strengthening both family life and surrounding neighborhoods. Our proposed ADU would be intended for my retired mother, who no longer wishes to maintain a full-size, multi-level home due to mobility and upkeep challenges. Her primary goal is to remain independent while continuing to live in a historic neighborhood she values, close to her granddaughter and the growing family. For our part, as parents with full-time jobs, having a grandmother nearby is extremely helpful for keeping our childcare costs affordable. We believe the property that we are considering presents an ideal use case for an ADU for several reasons. It is a large R2 zoned property featuring a well-constructed existing 400-foot carriage house at the rear with separate private alley access and dedicated parking. The lot already measures 9,060 square feet, just a hair under the current 10,000 square foot requirement. However, under the new regulations, it would be a 6,000 square foot requirement. The carriage house already has an electrical connection, and there is sufficient paved area to expand the structure to approximately 750 square feet without additional lot coverage impacts. Furthermore, I understand that financing ADUs is a challenge across other cities that have instituted these changes, and my mother is capable of selling her current home to finance the construction of an ADU. In efforts to preserve the local character of the neighborhood, we have engaged a local architect to prepare plans that ensure that design remains historically cohesive within the neighborhood. We look forward to submitting those plans for permitting as soon as the proposed regulations would allow. The bottom line is we see the opportunity that these proposed regulations provide to keep families together and support older adults and those with disabilities in retaining independence, all while maintaining neighborhood character. We are excited to work with the city in the coming months as these regulations make their way through the approval process. Thank you for your consideration.
Any questions? Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Any other testimony in support?
Good afternoon. My name's Peter Katz, 633 Apples Way, Lincoln, Nebraska, 68516. I'm here as a recovering land use development attorney, and I'm here also as the owner of Neb Holdings, which is a company that I'm trying to use to develop and focus affordable housing. About 6 to 9 months ago, I was focusing and thinking we have a comp plan that encourages higher densities in our existing community, and I inquired of staff, where are we at on ADUs in Lincoln? Because I remember when we passed this last time, I said it'll never work. Little did I know, no ADU's been built in the existing city. Nobody can do it, which is exactly what I said. And if you listen to the testimony today, Jacob, what a phenomenal presentation. Well done. Very detailed and thorough. And AARP, that's been a leader in the state, has done a lot of work up in Omaha. Wow. Let's get busy. Let's have way too many ADUs to not deal with what we can do. Let's get them going. Let's make them happen. And I'm here as a fan, so what you have is an improvement. But what I'm telling you, my prediction, we won't get very many. Can't happen. Not going to happen. Why? Because we still have the impediment of making owners have them, number one. That's the biggest one. And number two, just the problems of getting through building codes and building safety issues. So I'm experimenting with ChatGPT. It's phenomenal. If you're not trying it, it's phenomenal what you can get. So what I put in your packet through them was a discussion about what I consider two opportunities that we need to pass this, but then we need to work on what are the other impediments to ADUs and make it happen and be serious about it as a great policy for the city of Lincoln. let's focus on why we think owners. I mean, Jacob came and presented to involved with the Strong Towns group. Landlords can be responsible owners. You don't have to own in the neighborhood. At the hearing we had, we had a woman who has 3 rentals, Indian Village neighborhood. She lives in the neighborhood. So my suggestion, ChatGPT, we should be able to create a classification of responsible ADU operators. I don't know what all the details are, but it shouldn't have to be an owner-occupied requirement. So let's work on it. I don't know what the answer is, but let's find a solution. Good property owners are good for a neighborhood. And most rentals today are by responsible landlords. Just because we have some bad actors doesn't mean you put them all out to pasture. Second issue, building these things. Wow, expensive. You're gonna go, oh, he left already. I've talked to me, is that this strong? Architects, controls, all these issues that we have. When you go get a custom suit made, what runs to the cost of that custom suit as opposed to buying off the rack? And so ARP has some pre-approved plans, there's some stuff going on. The 2 building code issues that I saw out there, one is get some background reading on park models. They're a product that is built according to RV construction standards, and they're built with the idea you move them into an RV park, and it's more of a permanent house than a temporary house, but it all has to do with code construction requirements. The current codes treat those as temporary, not permanent housing. But there are several communities in the nation that allow those RV standards to be used for ADU purposes. I think we should explore that. The other one, I happened to be on a podcast, and I think I put that in there. Listen to it.
1 more minute.
Which is the ability that the International Residential Code apparently has an appendix with different rules for being able to build these things. So let's get busy on that. And so I'll be happy to answer any questions. I think ADUs are a good opportunity for us that we need to do everything we possibly can do to create more of them than we know what to do with. I told the group I was with, I said, what a problem to have. Let's make it happen. Be happy to answer any questions.
Any questions today? Thank you for your testimony.
Thank you.
Any additional testimony in support? Any testimony in a neutral capacity? Any testimony in opposition? Do we have any staff questions? No? But thank you. And obviously, is there anything else you'd like to add, Jacob?
No.
Okay, perfect. Let's have our motion to close.
I would move that we close the public hearing.
Second, Edens?
Ball,
Yes.
Campbell,
Yes.
Cruz,
Yes.
Ebert,
Yes.
Edens,
Yes.
Fight,
Yes.
Rodenberg,
Yes.
Joy.
Yes.
Public hearing closed.
And I move that we approve text amendment 26002.
Second, Edens?
Okay, who would like to start? We'll start on this end. Okay, Commissioner Rodenberg.
In the South and the West, they call these casitas. And I have had the opportunity to stay in my brother's in Scottsdale. And it's funny because I think he built it for guests and not as a rental, but as his family grew, his youngest daughter wanted to get away from her brothers. And it was, so we talk about the aging population, but this could also be an opportunity for growing families to put their teenage kid in their separate living space. Ours is a little bit more restrictive. When we were in Palm Springs a couple weeks ago, we rented a house that had a casita. There were 5 of us. We all were able to spread out, but one of them was housed in the casita, and there was not an owner living there. So we are a little more restrictive as written, that you do have to have an owner occupying it. As a realtor, I'm painfully aware of our lack of housing, and I think this is a good opportunity to help people. There are a lot of people that are in their homes, and as their assessment goes up, they can't afford to live there anymore to pay the taxes. And this would allow them to possibly have a little extra generated income, or as Mr. Johnson said, to live comfortably in place. So I'm going to be all in favor of this.
Excellent. Commissioner?
I'm in favor too. I really liked the term you used of gentle density, which is a cool term I like. But as we know, this is a first step. Change is scary. It's usually slow. So I know we had no one here to testify in opposition, but we received a lot of comments in opposition. And so I like that, if an HOA is super passionate about restricting ADUs, they still can. But I'm hopeful that we can move forward with some less restrictions in the future. But again, change is slow, and we just need to take one baby step at a time.
Commissioner?
I agree. I'll be fully supporting this. I would like to not let another 10 years go by if no ADUs are constructed before we revisit this. So I think it would be interesting to get some data in the next 6 months to a year to find out if anyone's taking advantage of these lessening restrictions and new ordinances. And also, if there is a hang up between building codes or safety issues that are making it difficult for people to actually get these built, I think that needs to be evaluated as well.
Excellent. Commissioner?
I'm struck by how expanding the definition of an ADU and minimizing some of these restrictions that actually hinder building will ultimately open things up for people. When I think of adding on to a house, I've never thought of that in terms of an ADU. And just the fact that, hey, if you had this, and this, now all of a sudden this is its own little space, its own little apartment or whatever. And how many people, when they think of ADUs, only think of that detached little casita that's separate from it, not understanding or realizing that they could in fact build above their garage or build onto their existing home or build below in their basement, whatever. And I think when people realize that those two are ADUs, that we'll see a lot more of them popping up and a lot more acceptance of them as an option.
I agree with everything that was said. This is an alternative to make more affordable housing in some way, shape, or form. I'm all about people with disabilities being able to live independently, and this is an option for that. I'll speak personally for just a moment. I have very medically fragile grandchildren and with a single mom. And when an emergency happens and seconds matter, if we can get there in 30 seconds compared to a 10, 15-minute drive, that time makes a difference. So I hope we continue to look at broadening that, because a one-bedroom ADU won't work for them. Right now they're in my basement. That seems to work. It doesn't have its own separate kitchen yet, but we'll be looking at codes then, and hopefully they align. I do want to address the owner-occupied. We like that as a neighborhood organization because we feel if you live in the dwelling, you'll do a little bit better. If it's annoying to you living there, you're going to do something about it. We do have some bad actors in my neighborhood. We also have a lot of what I would call an ADU that are not permitted, and we have people living in garages. We have people living in RVs with the power cord ran from the house. We have a lot of that in my neighborhood. So housing is desperate need, affordable, accessible housing is a desperate need in our community. So I'm glad we're taking a step in the right direction, and I agree with my fellow commissioner that can we look at this again in a year? Where do we do it wrong, and where can we do it right?
Commissioner Bowe?
Yes, I think a lot has been said, and I'll probably just maybe add 2 points. One, I appreciate the presentation. It was very comprehensive and educated me as well, so thank you for that. And I have colleagues who have done it in San Jose and in Florida. One was for aging parents, so it was a tool for them to be close, be supported, and be more financially viable for them. So I do see it as a really good tool. And then in Florida, accessibility, right? And so it can be used for multi-purpose, as you mentioned. So I do think having that type of unit available and lowering the barriers for it can be tremendous for the community. And I appreciate, the work that was done. And then to add to that is just strategically, how do we, I get it, we have to take a step, and it's in a big step, but we know more work needs to be done, whether it's, changing the owner occupied or changing some of the other restrictions. But being able to sort of see that horizon and then putting some dates to that would be very helpful, just to hold all of us accountable for the journey we want to go on, even though we're just taking one step today. So I do think as a commission and as a planning department, how do we fit that into some of our goals?
Excellent. Commissioner Campbell?
As one of the 2 developments in this city that does allow ADUs, I would invite anybody to drive through Village Gardens and tell me which houses have the ADUs. We have lower level ADUs. We have above garage ADUs. We've got additions to homes that have provided ADUs, and all of them are working very well. Some of them were for mother-in-laws that lived and have now passed away, and now they are renting it out to a father and 2 sons, has 2 sons. And there's another one that built the ADU because it reduced their mortgage costs. By having that there, they were able to afford the house they wanted. So this is a great step forward, and I think that my concern was that it followed the architecture of the existing home, so that it blended right in, and that has happened in Village Gardens. And again, I would invite anybody to drive through and tell me which houses have the ADUs.
Commissioner Campbell, in Village Gardens, do you require the homeowner occupied there?
Yes.
And so that is only like one rental, not both being rentals?
That's correct.
Okay.
Yeah.
But I think that was one reason why I asked that original question, because I do think there may be more, right? But wasn't necessarily classified as an ADU. And how do we get visibility of that? I don't know the answer. To maybe use it as a model for someone else actually now doing an ADU, now that we have better understanding and classification of it. So, so I think that insight is important if we can get it.
Okay. I go ahead, Commissioner.
One thing I forgot to mention, having to do with owner occupied, is in the Palm Springs unit that we rented, there were very strict requirements. For instance, if a neighbor could hear music coming from your property, they had a number to call, and there would be fines involved. So at least that community allows non-owner rentals with ADUs, but they're regulated. So that would be a good thing to look at if we came to that.
Excellent points. I agree with my fellow commissioners. This is a great advancement forward. I do like the opportunities for close proximity owners and other advantages as we look through continued process and continue to develop what we have. There's a lot of great ideas out there, and it was really fun to hear someone that's going to implement right away. So thank you for your testimony. Let's call the vote.
All right, Ball?
Yes.
Campbell?
Yes.
Cruz?
Yes.
Ebert,
Yes.
Edens,
Yes.
Fight,
Yes.
Rodenberg.
Yes.
Joy.
Yes.
Approved 8-0.
At this time, anyone wishing to speak on an item not on the agenda may do so. Okay, let's adjourn. Let's motion.
Seeing none, I would move that we adjourn.
Second, Edens?
Ball,
Yes.
Campbell,
Yes.
Cruz,
Yes.
Ebert,
Yes.
Edens,
Yes.
Fight,
Yes.
Rodenberg,
Yes.
Joy.
Yes.
We are adjourned.
Thank you.